Today we're talking about developer documentation. So I'm talking about finding things about your development environment which you don't know about. For example, doing a database migration, or how to run integration tests, or how to deploy a development version of your software on some operating system. So at Fleet, our developer documentation is in our code base. And some of it is hosted on our main website. So if I go to documentation here, some of it is hosted on here. So if I search, say I'm a contributor, I want to do a database migration. So database migration, first thing that comes up, I go over here, prepare the database, serve new version. So this is documentation that's intended for users of the Fleet server and not necessarily for developers. As a developer, I want to know, how do I set up the migration. So one solution is to use grep or use your development environment to find answers to this. So I go into my development environment, I do a search here, database migration, and some things come up. They're not really necessarily relevant to this question. So sometimes using your IDE, you won't get the results you want. In other cases, you get too many results and you have to figure out which is the right one. So this problem with documentation is that it's a scaling problem, right? We need to be, in order to scale our engineering efforts, we need to have a good search capability in our engineering documentation. Otherwise, engineers can be discouraged from writing documentation. Documentation may be duplicated, or you have senior developers that kind of know the code base, have been there for a couple of years, and they're constantly interrupted by younger engineers that are just unable to find answers in the documentation. So one solution is to use a service. You could host a wiki page, team wiki page. You can sign up for Confluence, which is a popular documentation service. And there's also GitBook, which is a newcomer to this space. So GitBook is nice because it integrates with your Git repositories. So it makes it easy to use an open source project like Fleet or OS Query, because what you do is you make a fork of it, and then you integrate it into GitBook. So for example, I've made personal forks that are public of OS Query and Fleet documentation. So let me try the search here. I search for database migration, and the first item that comes up is what I need as a developer. I need to run this command, and it tells me what I need as a developer. So I made these forks, but I want to be able to synchronize them with the upstream fork, right? With the Fleet's fork. So I did a quick search of how to synchronize forks, and I found several answers on GitHub, and I'm doing it using a GitHub action, and this is the workflow, right? It checks out my repository, configures Git, then it looks at the upstream, the main repository, and then it merges and pushes it in. So I run this once every hour, so my fork is kept up to date, which means my documentation is kept up to date as well. So as you notice here, I have some personal notes. So you're also able to synchronize a private repository. So this is just a test repository I created. Some table of contents. I was playing around. You are able to upload these images. So I'll show you how it looks like. I'll show you how it looks like in GitHub. Well, before I do that, let's make a change. Let's go to over here to page 2. Let's edit, and let's type some sample text here, and then we can describe your changes. Modified page 2, and then let's merge it back in. And it says it's synchronizing, so it should show up shortly. But let's go back to that repo, right? So I had one image you saw there. The image is being held here in assets. And then basically all the content is being synced. So I had that page 1 with some text and the image. And let's see, it's already been synchronized. See modify page 2. I go to page 2, and we see that sample text I added. So we're synchronizing our Git repository with the notes in GitBook. So this is something you can do. You can also synchronize an actual app, right? There's some apps that are Git-based. So in addition to using the note-taking app, you can also have the notes in here so that they're searchable along with your development documentation. Obsidian, which is a popular note-taking app, uses Markdown, and those Markdown notes can be also synchronized with Git, and then you can search them from GitBook. So lots of cool stuff here for GitBook.